I'd been sitting in my kitchen for the better part of 20 minutes, watching the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the linoleum floor. The house was quiet except for the soft tick of the clock on the wall, the one my husband Thomas bought me 30 years ago. He'd been gone for 5 years now, and somehow the silence had gotten louder. Before I continue, I should mention that I'm Margaret Holloway. I taught English at Franklin High School for 37 years before retiring 3 years ago. I turned 65 last month, though my daughter didn't call until 3 days later. She said she'd been busy with work. I picked up my pill organizer from the kitchen counter, Monday through Sunday, morning and evening. Blue for blood pressure, white for cholesterol, the small pink one for my thyroid. I'd been taking them religiously since my doctor adjusted my prescriptions 6 months ago. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My daughter Rachel lived 40 minutes away in Hartford and rarely visited unless she needed something. My son David was in California, and we hadn't spoken in almost a year after he'd asked me to co-sign a business loan I couldn't afford. I opened the door to find my neighbor, Patricia Chen, holding a casserole dish. "Margaret, I made too much lasagna again," she said with that warm smile of hers. "You know how Frank complains about my portions." Patricia was one of the few bright spots in my week. She and her husband Frank had moved in next door 2 years ago, and she'd made a habit of bringing me dinner once a week. I suspected she knew I didn't cook much for just myself anymore. "You're too kind," I said, taking the dish. The warmth seeped through the oven mitts into my hands. "Would you like to come in for tea?" "I wish I could, but Frank's doctor appointment is in 20 minutes. Rain check?" After she left, I set the lasagna on the counter and noticed the blinking light on my answering machine. One message. I pressed play. "Mom, it's Rachel. I need to talk to you about something important. Can you call me back? It's about Dad's estate." My stomach tightened. We'd been through this conversation 3 times already. Thomas had left everything to me in his will. Our house in Riverside, Connecticut. Our savings. His pension. Rachel had been asking me to restructure things, as she called it. Transfer the house deed to include her name. Set up a joint account. For tax purposes, she'd said. I didn't call her back that evening. The next morning, I drove to Walgreens to pick up my prescriptions. My doctor had increased one of my medications last week, and the refill was ready. The pharmacist, a young man named David Walsh who'd been there for years, called me to the counter. "Mrs. Holloway, could you wait a moment? I need to verify something with your doctor." I waited, watching him type on his computer, then pick up the phone. His expression shifted from professional to concerned. After a brief conversation, he hung up and gestured for me to step closer. "Mrs. Holloway," he said quietly, "your doctor didn't call in any dosage changes. The prescription in our system shows the same dosage you've been taking for 6 months." My hands went cold, but I got a call last week. Someone said they were from Dr. Morrison's office, telling me to take double the dose. David's face went pale. "Who called you?" I assumed it was a nurse. She said Dr. Morrison wanted to adjust my blood pressure medication because my last reading was high. "Mrs. Holloway, this is serious. Taking double that dose could cause severe hypotension, dizziness, falls. At your age," he trailed off. "You could have ended up in the hospital. Or worse." The fluorescent lights overhead suddenly seemed too bright. But who would? "I'm keeping your prescriptions at the current safe dosage," David said. "But I think you need to call your doctor right away. And maybe," he hesitated, "maybe think about who has access to your phone messages or medical information." I drove home in a daze. The tree-lined streets of Riverside blurred past my windshield. Who had called me? The voice had sounded professional, female, around 30 or 40 years old. I'd been half asleep when I answered, hadn't thought to question it. Then I remembered. Rachel had been there 2 weeks ago. She'd asked to use my computer to check her email while I made lunch. My computer where I kept all my medical information in a file labeled health records. She'd been alone in my study for at least 15 minutes. No. I pushed the thought away. My own daughter wouldn't. But the voice on the phone call. Now that I thought about it clearly, it could have been Rachel. She'd worked in sales for years, knew how to modulate her voice professionally. When I got home, I sat in Thomas's old armchair, the leather cracked and worn from years of him reading there. I needed to think clearly. If someone had tried to hurt me with my medication, I needed proof. I needed to know for certain. I called my daughter. Mom, finally. Did you get my message? Yes. What did you want to talk about? I've been thinking about your financial situation. You're all alone in that big house, and honestly, it's not safe. What if you fall? What if something happens? Michael and I think you should sell the house and move into assisted living. We found a really nice facility in West Hartford. Michael, her husband. I'd never quite warmed to him, though I couldn't put my finger on why. He worked in pharmaceuticals, I suddenly remembered. He'd know about medication dosages. I'm perfectly capable of living in my own home, Rachel. Mom, be reasonable. You're 65. How long do you think you can manage those stairs? What if you have another dizzy spell like last month? I hadn't told Rachel about that dizzy spell. I'd only mentioned it to Patricia. Who told you about that? A pause. You did, Mom. You're forgetting things. That's exactly what I'm worried about. But I hadn't. I was certain. I need to go, I said. Mom, wait. About the house. I had a real estate agent look at it. We could get $425,000, maybe more. If you moved to the facility, your expenses would only be $3,500 a month. The rest could be invested. And Michael knows a great financial advisor who could... Goodbye, Rachel. I hung up and sat in the silence. $425,000. My house. The place where I'd raised 2 children. Where Thomas and I had celebrated 38 anniversaries, where every room held memories. And Rachel wanted to sell it. I thought about the phone call telling me to double my medication. If I'd followed those instructions for a few weeks, I might have had a serious health incident, a fall, a stroke from low blood pressure. Then Rachel would have her opening to declare me incompetent, sell the house, control my assets. My hands were shaking. I set down my teacup before I could spill it. I needed help. I needed someone who would believe me. I called Patricia. She came over within 10 minutes, Frank following behind her with a concerned expression. Margaret, what's wrong? Patricia took my hands. You look like you've seen a ghost. I told them everything. The phone call about the medication, David Walsh at the pharmacy, Rachel's sudden pressure to sell the house. The dizzy spell I'd only told Patricia about that Rachel somehow knew. Frank's expression darkened. Patricia, didn't you mention that Rachel asked you about Margaret's health last week when you saw her at the grocery store? Patricia nodded slowly. She asked if you'd been having any memory problems, if you seemed confused. I thought it was just normal daughter concern, so I mentioned the dizzy spell. Oh, Margaret, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, I said. But I need to know for certain. I need proof. Frank, who'd been a police officer before retiring, sat forward. Margaret, this is serious. If what you're suggesting is true, this is attempted fraud at minimum, possibly attempted harm. You need to document everything. How? First, we get your house secure. Security cameras, especially on your doors. Second, you need to preserve any evidence. That phone call, do you have caller ID records? I shook my head. I erased the message. Okay, from now on, save everything. Every call, every text, every email from Rachel or her husband. Third, you should consult with an attorney about protecting your assets. Over the next week, Frank helped me install security cameras in my living room, kitchen, and both entrances. I felt foolish at first, spying on my own daughter. But Frank was insistent. If she's innocent, you'll have peace of mind. If she's not, you'll have evidence. Rachel called twice more that week, each time pressuring me about the house. I recorded the conversations on my phone. Mom, I spoke to the facility. They have an opening next month. We need to move on this. I told you, Rachel. I'm not selling the house. You're being stubborn. You can't take care of yourself properly. What if something happens? Then something happens. It's my life, Rachel. No, it's my inheritance you're jeopardizing. That house is falling apart. Every month you wait, you're losing equity. There it was, the mask slipping. So this is about money. Of course it's about money. Do you know how much Michael and I owe in student loans? How expensive childcare is for the kids? We're drowning, Mom, and you're sitting on $500,000 in equity. I never asked you to go to Yale. I never asked you to buy a house you couldn't afford. Unbelievable. Your own daughter is struggling, and you won't even— I hung up. My hands were shaking with anger now, not fear. 2 days later, Rachel showed up unannounced. The security camera caught her approaching my front door at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday when she should have been at work. I opened the door but left the chain lock engaged. Mom, we need to talk. I thought we said everything we needed to say. Can I please come in? This is ridiculous. Talking through a door chain like I'm some kind of criminal. Against my better judgment, I let her in. Rachel walked straight to the kitchen, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She dressed up, I noticed. Blazer, dress pants, like she was trying to look official. I brought some papers for you to sign, she said, pulling a folder from her bag. It's just a power of attorney, so I can help you manage your finances. And this one transfers the house into a living trust with both our names. I'm not signing anything. Mom, please. I'm trying to help you. You're getting older, and someone needs to. Help me? Like you helped by calling me and telling me to double my blood pressure medication? Rachel's face went completely still. What are you talking about? The pharmacist caught it. You called pretending to be from Dr. Morrison's office. You told me to take double the dose. That's insane. I would never. You work in sales, Rachel. You know how to change your voice. And Michael works in pharmaceuticals. He'd know exactly what dosage would be dangerous but not immediately fatal. You're paranoid. You're imagining things. This is exactly why you need help, Mom. You're clearly not thinking rationally. Get out. Mom, get out of my house, Rachel. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Cold calculation. Like she was weighing her options. Fine. But I'm calling Adult Protective Services. You're clearly not competent to make decisions anymore. After she left, I sat down and cried for the first time since Thomas died. Not from fear, but from grief. The daughter I'd raised, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose homework I'd checked, whose wedding I'd paid for, had tried to hurt me for money. Frank came over that evening after Patricia called him. He watched the security camera footage with me. She was scouting, he said. Looking at your medication bottles on the counter. See how she picked one up and read the label? What do I do? You call the police, you call a lawyer, and you protect yourself. The lawyer was named Jennifer Martinez, and she was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Mrs. Holloway, what you're describing is financial exploitation of an elderly person in Connecticut. That's a serious crime. But we need solid proof. I have the recordings. The camera footage. That's good. But for the medication incident, we need more. Can the pharmacist testify to the fake call? I think so. I'll need phone records showing a call from Rachel's number to your house on the date in question. I'll need medical documentation from your doctor about the danger of the increased dosage. And I'll need you to make a police report. Detective James Cooper met me at the police station the next day. He was in his 50s, gray hair, kind eyes that reminded me of Thomas. Mrs. Holloway, walk me through this from the beginning. I did. Everything. The phone call, the pharmacist's warning, Rachel's pressure about the house, the recorded conversations, the security footage. And you believe your daughter was trying to harm you to gain access to your assets? I believe my daughter and her husband were trying to cause a medical incident that would allow them to declare me incompetent and take control of my property. Detective Cooper nodded slowly. I'm going to need to get your phone records. We'll need statements from the pharmacist and your doctor, and I want to do a recorded interview with you about the specifics of each incident. Over the next 2 weeks, the investigation unfolded. Detective Cooper contacted my phone company. There had been a call from Rachel's cell phone to my house on the day of the fake medication instruction. Rachel had claimed she'd just called to chat, but my phone records showed the call lasted 11 minutes, and it came right after a web search on her laptop for increasing blood pressure medication dosage effects. Michael's work computer showed searches for elderly medication errors and hypotension falls in elderly from his office IP address. And then there was the email. Detective Cooper found it on Rachel's personal email account when they executed a search warrant. An email from Rachel to Michael. If she falls and breaks her hip, we can finally move her out of that house. Dr. Morrison said her BP has been perfect, so we need to create an incident. The arrest happened on a Thursday morning. I wasn't there, but Patricia told me later that 3 police cars showed up at Rachel's house in Hartford. Both Rachel and Michael were taken into custody. The charges were serious. Attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person, conspiracy to commit fraud, reckless endangerment. Rachel's lawyer called me 2 days after the arrest. Mrs. Holloway, my client would like to speak with you. No. She's your daughter. She's asking for a chance to explain. Tell my daughter that she had 65 years of chances. She chose to spend them planning how to steal from me. The trial was set for 6 months out, but it never made it that far. The evidence was overwhelming. Rachel and Michael both pleaded guilty to reduced charges. Rachel received 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and was ordered to pay restitution for my legal fees. Michael received 3 years of probation and was fired from his pharmaceutical job. Most importantly, the judge granted a permanent restraining order. Neither Rachel nor Michael could contact me or come within 500 feet of my home. I sat in the courtroom when the sentence was read, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just emptiness, where a daughter used to be. Patricia drove me home afterward. She didn't try to fill the silence with platitudes or advice. She just held my hand. You did the right thing, she said finally as we pulled into my driveway. Then why does it feel so wrong? Because you're a mother. But Margaret, she would have hurt you. She might have killed you. I knew she was right, but knowing didn't make it easier. The months that followed were strange. My house felt different now, knowing Rachel had walked through it, calculating its value, viewing it as an asset instead of a home. I found myself jumping at every phone call, every knock on the door. Then Patricia had an idea. There's a literacy program at the public library. They need volunteer tutors for adult learners. You taught English for almost 40 years. Maybe. I started volunteering on Tuesdays and Thursdays. My first student was a woman named Maria Santos, 42 years old, who'd immigrated from Guatemala and never learned to read English properly. She worked 2 jobs cleaning houses and wanted to read bedtime stories to her grandchildren. Teaching her to read became the highlight of my week. Then there was Marcus, a 60-year-old veteran who'd dropped out of school in 9th grade and wanted to finally get his GED. And Jennifer, a single mother working toward her real estate license, who needed help with the written exam. One evening, 6 months after Rachel's sentencing, I was sitting in my kitchen making notes for Marcus's next lesson when I realized I was humming, a song Thomas used to play on Sunday mornings while making pancakes. The doorbell rang. I checked the security camera monitor. Patricia, holding what looked like a birthday cake. I know it's not your birthday, she said when I opened the door. But Frank and I decided you needed a celebration anyway. You've been volunteering for 6 months, and your students wanted to thank you. Behind her, Frank appeared, followed by Maria, Marcus, and Jennifer. Mrs. Holloway, we wanted to show our appreciation, Maria said shyly. She handed me a card. Inside, each of them had written messages in their own handwriting. Marcus's was stilted but proud. Jennifer's was flowing and confident. Maria's included a drawing from her granddaughter. I started crying and couldn't stop. That night, after they'd all left, and I was alone again, I walked to my study and opened the bottom drawer of Thomas's old desk. Inside was an envelope that had arrived 3 weeks ago. Rachel's handwriting on the front. I'd never opened it. I picked it up, felt the weight of it. Then I walked to the fireplace, struck a match, and watched it burn. Some letters don't need to be read. Some relationships can't be repaired. And that was okay. I am 66 years old now. I live alone in the house my husband and I bought 43 years ago. My daughter tried to steal it from me, tried to hurt me for money, and I had to send her to jail to stop her. But I am not alone. I have Patricia and Frank next door. I have my students at the library. I have Tuesday evening book club with 4 other retired teachers. I have my garden, which I've started tending again after years of neglect. Last week, Maria's granddaughter read me a story she'd written herself. It was 3 pages long, full of spelling errors and grammatical mistakes, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. This is my inheritance now. Not money or property, but moments like these. Connection, purpose, the chance to help someone else find their voice. Rachel wanted my house. She could have had so much more if she'd just asked for my time, my love, my knowledge. But she chose greed, and in choosing it, she lost everything that actually mattered. I don't forgive her. Maybe that makes me a bad person, a bad Christian, a bad mother. But I've learned that sometimes protecting yourself isn't cruel. It's necessary. The late afternoon sun is streaming through my kitchen window again. My pill organizer sits on the counter, Monday through Sunday, the correct dosage in each compartment. I am safe. I am healthy. I am enough. And tomorrow, Marcus is going to read his first complete chapter book. He's been practicing for weeks, and he wants me to be there when he finishes it. I wouldn't miss it for anything in the world.